The blizzard had appeared without warning, turning a crisp winter afternoon into a wide-out nightmare in under an hour. Nora Silvermist had just managed to reach her cabin before the world outside dissolved into a furious swirl of snow and wind, strong enough to knock her off her feet. Now she huddled close to her fireplace, listening to the storm batter the walls and hoping her small shelter could withstand nature's assault. She had been living here for 8 months, ever since Marcus Ironwood had rejected her in front of the entire Winterfong pack. The sting of that rejection had been searing, but the aftermath was worse. The pitying looks, the hushed whispers, the endless reminders that she hadn't been good enough for an alpha destined for leadership. Nora had left, packed her few belongings, and walked away from the pack's territory, deeper and deeper into neutral wilderness, until she stumbled upon this abandoned cabin. Small, drafty, barely suitable for survival, but it was hers. No one to judge her. No one to pity her. No one to remind her of her failure. The wind howled louder, rattling the walls. Nora added another log to the fire, grateful she had stocked up before the storm hit. She had enough food and water to last a week, though she prayed the blizzard wouldn't endure that long. A sound outside made her freeze. Not the wind, not the usual storm noises, but something else, a faint, desperate scratching at her door. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Opening the door in this weather could be deadly, and whatever it was probably already dying anyway. But the sound came again, more urgent this time. Against her better judgment, Nora found herself moving toward the door. She had always been too soft-hearted, one of the reasons Marcus had claimed he couldn't accept her as his mate. Soft hearts get wolves killed in this brutal world, he had said. She cracked the door just enough to peer outside, and her breath caught. A massive wolf lay collapsed on her doorstep, snow and ice crusted into its fur, on the verge of freezing to death. Its head lifted weakly, revealing eyes of an unusual silver blue, intelligent, desperate, pleading. Every survival instinct screamed at Nora to close the door. This was an unknown wolf, probably an alpha judging by its size, and letting it inside could be suicidal. But those eyes, so full of life, so close to death, made her heart ache. "You're probably going to kill me for this," she muttered, wedging the door open wider. "Come on, get inside before we both freeze." The wolf tried to rise, but its legs wobbled uselessly. Hypothermia had taken hold. Nora did something reckless. She stepped into the blizzard, grabbed the wolf's front legs, and dragged it through the doorway. It took all her strength and several minutes, but finally, she had the massive creature inside, the door shut tight against the storm. It lay on the floor, barely breathing, formatted with ice and snow, body temperature dangerously low. "Okay," Nora said, more to steady herself than to communicate. "First, we get you warm and dry. Then, we'll see if you're going to eat me." She wrapped it in every towel and blanket she owned, drying its fur as best she could. The wolf didn't resist, too weak to even move. Once sufficiently dry, she dragged it closer to the fire, building the flames until the cabin became almost uncomfortably warm. "You're lucky I'm an idiot who can't leave things to die," she muttered, checking its pulse and breathing. Both were slow but steady, hypothermia, but not fatal. "Anyone with sense would have left you outside. Apparently, I don't have sense." The wolf's silver-blue eyes opened slightly, locking on hers with an intelligence that made Nora shiver. This was no ordinary animal, it was a shifted werewolf, and the danger only heightened. "Don't look at me like that," she said, settling back on her heels. "I'm not brave. I'm not heroic. I'm just broken. Maybe if I save your life, I'll feel like I have a purpose beyond surviving." Tears pricked her eyes. 8 months of isolation, and the first living creature she had contact with made all her defenses crumble. "Sorry," she whispered, wiping her cheeks. "You probably don't care about my pathetic life. Let's get you some water." She coaxed the wolf into drinking, then stayed beside it through the night. The storm raged, but Nora talked anyway, partly to keep herself awake, partly because the words refused to stop. "I was supposed to be mated to Marcus Ironwood," she said around midnight. "We grew up together, childhood friends. Everyone thought we'd end up together. I thought we would too, until he rejected me. Said I wasn't strong enough to stand beside a future alpha. My soft heart would be a liability. He needed someone ruthless. Nora laughed bitterly. He wasn't wrong. I am too soft. Too weak. I'm the kind of fool who drags a dying wolf into her cabin during a blizzard instead of letting it die. The wolf made a soft sound, almost like disagreement. She stroked its fur unconsciously. If I were stronger, maybe he'd have wanted me. Maybe I'd be Luna of the Winterfang pack, instead of this, alone life. The really pathetic part? I don't even miss him anymore. I miss belonging somewhere. Having purpose. Feeling like I matter. The wolf shifted, resting its head against her leg. Nora felt something in her chest crack open. This creature, a stranger who should have been dangerous, was comforting her. Thank you, she whispered. Even if you don't understand, thank you for listening. Eventually she dozed off, one hand resting on the wolf's side, soothed by the fire's warmth and the presence of another being. Morning brought gray light filtering through the cabin windows. The storm still raged, but the wolf looked stronger, testing its legs. Good morning, she said, voice rough. How are you feeling? Can you move at all? Its breathing and pulse had strengthened overnight. Storm isn't letting up, she observed, peering out at the whiteout. Looks like you're stuck with me for at least another day. Hope you don't mind. Breakfast was simple. She offered the wolf dried meat, which it ate methodically. Daylight revealed its fur, thick, striking gray and white, matted but magnificent. Its build was massive, undeniably alpha, and its silver-blue eyes followed her every movement with unnerving awareness. You know, she said by the fire, I've been alone for 8 months, barely speaking a word to anyone. But give me a wolf who can't talk back, and suddenly I can't stop babbling. My grandmother would have said, starved for connection, even if one-sided. The wolf tilted its head, almost encouraging her. My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She was the omega of our pack, but the wisest wolf I ever knew. She taught me that softness wasn't weakness, it was a strength. To remain kind in a cruel world, to help even when it hurts, to love even when it breaks your heart. She died when I was 15, right before I would start learning what it meant to be omega. Maybe that's why I've always felt lost. And now, alone, I don't know if I've honored her lessons. The day passed slowly. Nora shared thoughts, fears, stories with the wolf, her words unjudged, uninterrupted, freeing. Can I tell you something pathetic? She asked midday. Sometimes I'm glad Marcus rejected me. Not for the pain, but because it gave me an excuse to leave. I never fit in with the Winterfang pack. Too gentle, too emotional, too focused on helping. If he'd accepted me, I'd have spent my life pretending to be someone I'm not. At least now I can be myself, even if it's alone. The wolf responded with a sound that seemed like agreement. Nora laughed. You're a good listener, better than most wolves I've met. Night came again. She curled against the wolf's warm body, reckless, but safer than freezing. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For not hurting me, for keeping me warm, for letting me just be. The storm ended during the night, leaving a bright, clear morning. The wolf, now fully recovered, moved toward the door. The storm's over, she said. Go home, back to your pack. It paused, then looked back, a trace of regret in its silver-blue gaze. Nora opened the door, heart aching. Snow stretched in all directions, the forest beyond stark and inviting. Go on, she whispered. Be safe. The wolf stepped into the snow, moving toward the trees, leaving Nora staring at the empty clearing. The silence, once comforting, now felt oppressive. Her thoughts were interrupted the next morning by voices outside. Confused, she approached the window, and froze. Wolves everywhere, dozens in human and wolf form, all clad in royal guard armor or formal attire. At the center stood a man who made every hair on her body stand on end. Tall, powerful, dark hair, striking features, but it was his eyes that rooted her to the spot, silver blue, the same eyes that had watched her for 3 days. It was him. The wolf she had saved, in human form. Her hands shook as she opened the cabin door. He stepped closer, commanding yet calm. "Hello, Nora," he said, voice deep and authoritative. "May I come in?" She nodded mutely, mind reeling. The royal guards formed defensive positions outside. "Who are you?" she whispered, though she already feared the answer. "My name is Kiran Nightshade," he replied, eyes never leaving hers. "I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories." The words hit her like a physical blow. She had saved the Alpha King's life. She had sheltered him. She had poured out her heart to him. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you were just a wolf caught in the storm." "I never would have," Nora stammered, voice trembling as Kiran stepped closer. She felt rooted to the spot, unable to retreat. She had shared so much of herself, her fears, her pain, her heart, and now she was exposed. "What?" Kiran asked softly, his silver blue eyes searching hers. "You've been so honest, Nora. Sharing who you are when you think no one important is watching, that mattered." Tears pricked at Nora's eyes. I shouldn't have burdened you with all my problems. You were injured, recovering, and I just kept talking." "Don't apologize," he said firmly, but gently. "Nora, do you know what I was doing when I got caught in that storm?" She shook her head, curiosity mingled with apprehension. "I was traveling alone in wolf form, trying to escape the pressures of leadership for a few days. I've been Alpha King for 20 years, and in all that time, every conversation I've had has been filtered, through politics, through power. No one talks to me like I'm just a person. No one shows me their real self, because everyone's too busy trying to impress, manipulate, or gain advantage." He took another step closer, emotion flickering across those intense eyes. "And then the blizzard hit. I was separated from my guards, nearly frozen to death, until a kind Omega dragged me into her cabin and saved my life without asking who I was or what I could offer her." "Anyone would have done the same," Nora protested weakly. "No," Kiran countered, his voice soft but edged with certainty. "Most wolves would have left me to die rather than risk bringing a strange alpha into their home. But you didn't hesitate. You risked yourself to save a stranger. And then you spent 3 days talking to me like I was someone worth knowing, not someone to be feared, not someone to be used." His hand rose, brushing her cheek with a gentle warmth that sent a shiver down her spine. "You told me things I don't think you've ever told anyone, about your rejection, your grandmother, feeling lost and alone. And Nora, I heard every word, every confession, every vulnerable moment." Nora's breath caught. "Oh goddess," she whispered, humiliation flooding her. "You heard me, talking about being weak and pathetic." "And I heard you," Kiran interrupted, "talking about kindness in a cruel world. Choosing compassion over self-interest, remaining soft-hearted despite being hurt. Those aren't weaknesses," he continued, his gaze piercing. "Those are exactly the qualities I've been searching for my entire life." He stepped even closer, close enough that their breaths mingled. "When you were talking about your grandmother's teachings, about how being gentle is its own kind of strength, do you know what I was thinking?" Nora shook her head, speechless. "I was thinking that I had finally found her. The one person in existence who could see past the crown to the man underneath. Who would value character over status. Who could offer kindness without expectation of reward. Who could be exactly what I needed without even trying." "I don't understand," Nora whispered. "The mate bond, Nora," he said, his voice low, reverent. "It formed during those 3 days. While you were caring for me, talking to me, being completely yourself. I fell in love with the person you truly are, not the person you pretend to be. You are my true mate, chosen by the moon goddess. And I came here today, To claim you. The word should have terrified Nora, but instead something deep in her chest settled into place. That strange sense of connection she had felt with the wolf, that desperate longing when it left, it all made sense. It was the mate bond. But I'm broken, she admitted, fear clawing at her throat. Marcus rejected me because I wasn't good enough to be Luna. How can I possibly be good enough to be queen? Marcus rejected you because he's a fool, Kieran said, fierce conviction in his voice. He couldn't see what was standing right in front of him. He wanted someone hard, ruthless, someone to help him climb. But Nora, that's not what makes a good leader. What makes a good leader is exactly what you have: compassion, wisdom, the ability to see people for who they are, not for what they can give you. He framed her face with both hands, eyes burning with intensity. You saved my life, not because you knew who I was, but because you couldn't leave a living creature to suffer. You talked to me for 3 days like I was someone worth knowing, with no agenda. You showed me who you are at your core. And that person is exactly what I've been waiting my entire life to find. What if I fail? She whispered, voice cracking. Then we'll fail together and learn, Kieran replied gently. But Nora, I've seen your strength. Not the kind that comes from physical power or ambition. The kind that helps a stranger in a storm. That remains kind despite being hurt. That values connection over self-preservation. That is true strength. And it's exactly what our kingdom needs. Tears streamed freely now, and Kieran brushed them away with his thumbs. I know this is overwhelming. I know I'm asking a lot, but Nora, you have to understand something. I didn't come here with an army to intimidate or force you. I came with guards because it's protocol. The choice is entirely yours. Tell me to leave, and I will. I'll make sure you're protected, provided for, and I'll walk away, even though it would destroy me. Why? She breathed. Because you spent 3 days showing me who you are, he said, voice soft, full of emotion. Someone who values genuine connection over obligation. Who needs to make her own choices. Who deserves to be with someone because she wants to, not because she has to. And I want you to choose me, the same way you chose to save me. Not for the crown, not for the mate bond, but for who we are to each other. Nora looked at him, at this commanding alpha who had listened to her soul and still found her worthy. She thought of the 3 days they had shared, how safe and seen she had felt, even with a wolf she thought couldn't understand her. I missed you, she admitted quietly. When you left yesterday, I felt empty. Like I lost something I hadn't even known I needed. I know, Kieran's voice was rough with emotion. I felt it too. That's the mate bond calling us back together. But Nora, I need to hear you say it. I need to know you're choosing this, choosing me of your own free will. Nora took a deep, steadying breath. I choose you. Not because you're the Alpha King, though that's terrifying. But because you listened to me for 3 days and didn't judge me. Because you made me feel less alone than I've felt in months. Because, when I look at you, I see someone who might actually understand me. Kieran's smile lit up the cabin. Thank you, he breathed, drawing her into his arms. Thank you for being brave enough to choose me. When he kissed her, the mate bond flared between them, a storm of fire and lightning that made Nora gasp. This was nothing like Marcus. This was life, electricity, and awakening in ways she had never imagined. When they broke apart, both glowing with the bond's energy, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. You need to know something. While I was in wolf form, listening to you talk about feeling worthless, it took everything I had not to shift right then and tell you how wrong you were. You are not broken, Nora. You are extraordinary. And I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you. I'm still scared, Nora admitted. Good, he said softly. Being scared means you're being brave. And you won't do this alone. I'll be beside you every step of the way, and so will everyone who serves our kingdom. You're not an outsider anymore, Nora. You're home. The word sank deep. 8 months she had told herself her cabin was home, that solitude was freedom. But now with Kieran, home was a person. A connection. A place where she belonged. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, smiling, "I introduce you to my guards and we begin the journey to the royal territory. About a week's travel. Time for you to adjust, to ask questions, and I finally get to hear more of your stories. Everything about you, not just what you confessed to a wolf you thought couldn't understand." "Never going to let me forget that, are you?" she asked, cheeks warm. "Never," Kieran said with a grin. "But only because every word you said showed me exactly why you're perfect. Your vulnerability, honesty, your beautiful heart, that's what made me fall in love." As they stepped outside, hand in hand, facing the assembled guards, Nora felt something she hadn't in 8 months: hope. The rejected Omega who had sheltered a freezing wolf had found her true mate. Being soft-hearted wasn't weakness, it was her greatest strength. The guards bowed, masks of surprise quickly replaced with respect, as Kieran declared her his mate, future queen, and anyone who questioned her would answer to him personally. As they walked away from the cabin together, surrounded by loyal guards but focused solely on each other, Nora thought about how dramatically life could change in less than a week. Alone and rejected, now mated and valued. All because she had saved a stranger in a storm. All because she had been herself. Sometimes, the bravest thing is to remain kind in a cruel world. Sometimes weakness is strength. And sometimes, the most powerful connections form when you're simply being yourself, thinking no one important is watching. But the Alpha King, he was watching. And he saw everything.